is there never lack? What never lacks? What's a sense of this that is always here? What is your nature? What is the sky for you? Is it peace? Is it stillness? Is it okayness? Is it presence? Is it awareness? What's it like to have all of that happening here? The sense of that background, that okayness, that beingness, that stillness, that love, whatever it is for you. And then the richness of what arises on the surface as Stephen arrives and we see Stephen and we're curious. Stephen, who is Stephen? How does life move in Stephen? What gifts is he bringing to us today? Because we notice that on the surface. And what does that arise in? What does that arise in? Is it a spaciousness, a peace, a connection? Or maybe the foreground is kind of loud for us right now. It's like, gosh, I really have some discomfort here, and I'm hoping I'm going to get some relief from it. And maybe that foreground can kind of obscure the background of the okayness, the peace, the love. Or maybe in me, it's like the enthusiasm. It's like, wow, I get to be with everybody today. That can be louder than the intrinsic okayness that's here. Inga knows this one. But I don't know what we should do. I was just playing around as we start, but I am curious, maybe just a little taste from everybody, and then we'll just see where we go. But I don't know Stephen, and it's like, who is Stephen? What brings Stephen here today? Do you have that curiosity and then but as I put the spotlight on Stephen, is it can we join him and whatever's alive for Stephen, like what our version of it is, and what's interesting for us right now. Hey, Stephen, what brings you here today?
Hey, good morning. Yeah, what brings me here today? Just it's hard to answer that. Just here intrigued by the movement from what you the the I amness, the existence, the feeling of awareness, and the seeming movement towards contraction and separation, and then the seeming movement back towards peace and um, and and comfort, the feeling of comfort versus the absence of um, peace. So that's it. Just yeah, it's hard to put into words. So.
Wow. How was that for all of us? This seeming movement. There's this I amness, this peace, this comfort. There's this seeming movement towards contraction, separation, this seeming movement back to this peace and comfort. For all of us, what's that movement like? Stephen uses the word contraction. What does that have? What's that like? Does something like move forward, like it kind of blends with something that's occurring in the foreground? It like blends with the arising a cloud, and then when it seemingly moves back to the I amness, to the comfort, to the peace, does it move backwards? Is it like a little recliner going forward and backward? Or is it more like a spaciousness? The I amness, this comfort, the peace is more like a spaciousness, and it just kind of and then something kind of focuses on something particular, a discomfort, a separation. How does it move in your system? And let's see, and let's just, since Stephen's new with us, we'll put him on the spot if he would like to, and we can ask him, how does it move in you, this seemingly movement? How do you track it?
Well, I think it has varied depending on the time stages of my life. Right now, I think, what I like the how you title this whole thing, effortless IFS. So for me, it's effortlessness. So anything that's effortless, anything that seems to be arising now without any effort, really, that's for me. I know that's home for me. And anything that requires even a little bit of effort, um, that's even a subtle movement away is um, is moving away from home. So and with the effortlessness, it's, yeah, there's often a feeling of it can be a feeling of peace and comfort, as I said, or love, but often it's just a feeling of neutrality, of yeah, it's just there's not much there other than neutrality, which I like because of years of anxiety and suffering before. So I love that neutrality as well.
Wow. About that, the clarity of how Stephen shared this. And so when there's this effortlessness, maybe you have a different word for it. Like, what's your word for it? For Stephen's using this effortlessness. And in that, there's a feeling that accompanies that often of this peace. It says the peace, comfort, love, and neutrality. And what's that for you when there's a sense of home, when there's a sense of, he described effortlessness as home. When you are home, what are the feelings that accompany that? How do you know? How do you know home is here? There's really rest here. Stephen's got this wonderful word, neutrality, peace, love, comfort. How does your system know it? And then use the word, this subtle, even a subtle movement from that. And he notices is a moving away from this home. How do you know? What's the indicator for you when there's a moving away from? Like, we have a moving towards a sense of this, well, there's effortlessness here, there's a sense of home, there's peace, comfort, love, neutrality. Peace, love, comfort, neutrality. What's the indicator for you? Does something tighten up in your body? Is there a little bit of tightness? Does it, does the thinking start thinking about something in the future? Is there a sense of, I'd be better off if this happens, or, tomorrow, next week, or if I lose weight, if I get this, what's the movement? And is there, in the nature of that movement, I mean, Stephen used the word effort, but is there some kind of contraction that comes with the moving away from home, moving away from peace, comfort, love, neutrality? And I'll ask one final question to Stephen on this one, and then we'll see what's coming up for everybody. Stephen, how do you track, or how do you somatically sense the moving away from home, this peace, comfort, love, neutrality? How do you aware of it? What's your indicators?
Hmm. For me, it feels like I'm almost in a trance. It's like a feeling of dissociation. I'm not quite in my body. It's almost like a trauma response where um, I'm not quite here in the now. That's what it, even though I am, it feels like I'm not. So I'm not quite in my body. So sometimes to feel like to get back to that feeling of home, to presence, it's almost like I have to. So I then feel my body. I feel my back against the chair, or my feet against the floor. There's noticing of the breathing happening. So that's how I track it. I don't quite feel like I'm here and now in the body.
About that, how does that translate for each of us? This is how it plays for Peter, for Stephen. Sorry, this is how it plays for Stephen. But what we're interested in is how does it play in your system? How do you know when there's a little movement? Stephen describes it. I'm not quite really here in the body. And so there's a sense of, for Stephen, as you can come back to here in the body, and the sense of here now. What's it in your system? And this is so grateful to how Stephen started us off today, because this was the whole, it's like you might have seen when you, if you looked at, like in my email, like the second, like right at the very top, I had a picture of two hands. It's like, what? What's that? Just two hands. But this was the whole idea, just what Stephen did. It's just that movement from home, which in IFS we call it self, to parts, and there's no problem with that, or to what's arising, any sense of contraction and want, and we celebrate that. And so there's not a sense of, even though right now we're playing with, oh, home is nice. We like Stephen loves staying home because it's like, God, I've had a lot of anxiety in my life. This home is so wonderful. But and so we kind of start there, right? That discernment is really important between, for me, between this home, this like left hand, this fulfillment, and what's arising. But that's the first view in effortless IFS. The second view is like throwing a birthday party for the right hand, throwing a birthday party for everything that arises, the sense of this Rumi's guest house, this welcoming, this infinite hot tub that everything soaks into. Everything's included. And that's the healing of the system, as everything's just effortlessly, I'm going to stick with the word effortlessly included. So it's a healing, but there's no doing. And then the third view is as we gently start recognizing the idea of two hands is just silly, that this, even this anxiety is made of this sense of home, that everything is, but we don't, there's no going anywhere in our exploration. Like as we notice each of us, like there's not a sense of there's something that needs to be done, there's something needs to be changed, like, oh, Zoe would be better if, or Jessica would be better, or Inga or Brenda, or Stephen or Sid would be better if. Like we explore, like we really see like the beauty, the perfection of what we are just as we are, and then we let all this play, that perhaps that home is here, that we are home. But before I want to open it up and see where what came up for everybody with where Stephen led us, but let me do my little housekeeping first that I'm supposed to do. Is just that what's that? I'm not a psychotherapist, I'm a mediator. And so this isn't the IFS of psychotherapy. It's friends and colleagues exploring together. If everybody's good, being responsible for their own journeys. If I could get a thumbs up, please, from you. And aren't you envious? Look at Zoe. She's just so relaxed, sitting back in her chair. Maybe I think she's out in the sun. Oh my gosh. She's like, I want to go there and have us all like zoom in and be out there outside with her sitting in those chairs. And my second one you see that I had recordings on. I always record these, but only my square is ever shared. However, the audio of that you shared could be shared as well, because I make this available sometimes to people who couldn't come and share it electronically. But the idea with effortless IFS is that we don't so much go into the stories of what's arising. Instead, we hear what the longing is, and we help our system find that what's being longed for is its very nature that's here. So vulnerability isn't necessary. So please listen to your protectors and don't share it. No need to share anything that you'd be uncomfortable with. And at the end, you're like, wait a minute, I should not have said that. Just stay on with me, tell me, and I'll go delete, delete, delete. If everybody's good that this might be shared, if I could get a thumbs up from you, please. Awesome. So here we are in this luxury Saturday together. It's like one of my very favorite things, even though it'd be even better in my mind if I was sitting out there with Zoe. But and then Stephen just started us off so richly. What's bubbling up for you all? What's coming up with what Stephen shared? What you got? Who's got something? Because we're going to go around and hear from everybody as far as how this playing for you. But I just wanted to see if there were any responses, or like, whoa, that was too much, or wow, that was so cool. Anything that's here before we kind of go to who's next. And then just one more question. How was that, being with, having kind of Stephen lead us in this? What was that for you? And could you track your version of what he was doing? Could you translate it into your system? That these were Stephen's words. The effortlessness, the neutrality, the being here in the body. That's how it worked for him. But our real curiosity is, how does it work for you? This movement. We're curious about. And isn't it exciting as we think, because we'll go to maybe we'll just follow my screen. We'll just go to Brenda next in just a minute. But it's like, aren't you curious? Like, we'll get to hear how this plays for each of us. And it's like each of us will be like guiding us through how they move, and we'll see if we can find that. And at the same time, if there's something like, yes, Sid, I don't want to talk about that. I've got this part that's just really pissing me off that I'm really upset about, or like, I didn't sleep last night. I'm so upset. You just, whatever's here. And, the first invitation is how it moves for you, but really what's here for you. Brenda, what's going on?
Well, first, just thanks so much to Steve for everything that he shared. It really resonated. But what came up for me was thinking about myself. I feel like I'm very aware and present, and in that place of the knowing the I that I am, especially when I'm participating in different events, listening to music, meditating, and so on. I want to be more present to that, of course, in everything that I do. And just an example, like yesterday, I was going to the grocery store, and I could see my mind. I was noticing my mind thinking about going to the grocery store, and just like that desire to connect with people, to feel that presence. But it was, it was more the thinking mind, thinking how much I desired that. And just, it did allow me to go slower and to really notice people more, and things like that. But, it definitely came from the thinking mind. And I have a desire to connect more with everything that is. And I feel like there is that separateness, even though I know, like, intellectually and everything that I've learned, it's not, but it feels like it is. So
Yes. So how about that? for all of us. We hear Brenda goes in the grocery store, and there is a desire to feel more presence. There's a desire to connect more with everything that is. Isn't that the most beautiful desire as we hear that desire in her system? Feel more presence, connect more with everything that is. It gives you, this is where I like, sometimes I find it helpful to label parts because we can really celebrate something. We can celebrate a desire like that, this longing. And I guess this is my question for all of us. As we hear that desire, like I want more of this presence, more of this connectedness. Where do we hear that in our system inside? Is it like in our head? Is it outside of us? Where do we hear it? Or is it more of a feeling, this sense of this yearning for more connection, more presence? And if we use this is why I like the parts thing, because if we can actually find where we hear the voice or where we feel it, then we become aware of it. Is there a sense in you, Brenda? Like, where do you, and if not, that's no problem because it's such an exquisite desire. But where do you find that or hear it or feel it? Is there a sense?
Well, certainly, I think the first thing I notice is my head in the talking. And then I definitely feel it in my heart because a part of me feels sad. Sad. Well, yeah, I definitely feel a part of sadness because like I know that connection that I feel at different times. And then sometimes I feel very separate. And so I feel it, I would say, just that in my heart, I would say my heart
Nice.
contracting, yet I have to say at the end of that experience, I had a beautiful experience in the grocery store. And I actually, I know I wasn't present to the moment later, but I carried that beauty
Yes.
later. But yeah, I would say just, yeah, like, contraction and in my heart.
Nice. Perfect. So perfect. So for all of us, it's we're in Brenda, the longing for more of this presence, more of this connection shows up very kind of viscerally as a feeling of contraction in the heart. Where do you find it? Because sometimes, like if you do straight Advaita or some of these other traditions, we can see this. They might want to ignore that or say that's not it. But we go the opposite way here. And so as we hear that, where is the longing in your system? Maybe it's not for, Brenda describes this for presence and more connection. And you, it might be, I want more of what Stephen was talking about, this sense of home, or I want more love, or I want more peace or more relief. Where do you find, like, what's the loudest longing in your system? Like we're hearing Brenda's in her heart, this kind of sadness and this longing. Where is it in your system? If everybody can find it, see if you can find it viscerally, just like Brenda described, the longing. And as you find that, as you hear it, how intimate can you be with this longing? Like if there's a child in the corner crying, like you don't stand on the other side of the room, you kind of move close to that child. As you move close to this, how, without triggering anything, without doing anything, to see if we can say in Stephen's word of this effortlessness, if we can stay in effortlessness during this, as we're aware of the contraction, the longing in Brenda, the sadness in her heart. Notice how close are you to it? How intimate are you with this longing, with this wanting? See if you can feel it, the longing in Brenda for presence and connection. See if you can feel that longing. And as you feel it, my question for you is, what's most like what's being longed for that's here now? What's most like what's being longed for that's here now? You can, and then We can touch, like in Brenda's system, some connection that's here. Well, there's some connection here. There's some presence here. And then how far is that from the longing itself, the sadness that's in the heart? It's most like what's being longed for. And are they separate? Is the longing separate from what's being longed for? Or is it more like it's soaking in it like a hot tub? Or is it even closer than that? It's like it's in the longing, like you could find it in the part that's longing, in the heart, in the sadness itself. Perhaps some presence and connection, or is it more like a hot tub? What's that like? All right, this is a lot. Let's just pause. Let's just pause here. How's it going for all of us with this? Because this can be scary. Parts can come up like this is too much. I don't want to get that close to the sadness, or this, I don't want to touch it. Like often parts come up and respond like that. And just to notice if there's any response, any parts reacting in your system, any sense of this is discomfort. I don't like this. This is uncomfortable. This is scary. And if so, can that be welcome too? Can that be welcomed? And maybe there's another voice from those we call a spiritual achiever. Like, yes, we want to get closer to this, more intimate. We want to go into that sadness. And we want to let this sadness recognize that fulfillment is here, that presence is here. Notice that. That's just a part, right? It's just a voice. And then here we are. And can all of that be welcomed? Maybe part so something doesn't like it and some that, hey, this is great. Let's go more. All of it's welcomed in the space of where we are. And then just to ask everybody, how are you doing? How's it going with all of this? What's here? What are you aware of? Are you aware of? And Brenda, how's it going? How's this going?
I like that, just that we can honor it, that we can talk about it and just be okay with that. Yeah. There's just some okayness about it, I guess you could say.
Oh, let's pause. Let's pause right there. Where do we all go with that? What Brenda's saying? Oh, darn it, Zoe, it's raining. She's having to go inside. We can't sit out in the sun with her. um, so this what Brenda just said, to this honor and to be okay with what's arising. Where do we go with that? The sense of, is there okayness with what's here inside of you right now, with the longing, the wanting? Is it okay that that's here? And if it's not, we often have voices like, of course that's not okay. It's uncomfortable. I don't like it. I want it to go away. I want it to change. Like, is it okay that that's what's happening inside of us? This, whatever the theater of Stephen, of Jessica, of Inga, of Sid, of Zoe and Brenda, whatever our inner theater is it okay? Is it really okay that that's here? And then we notice the voices that say it's not okay. It needs to change. And for some of us, for some people, that's the end of the journey. It's just, if I can just find this, what Brenda's pointing to, this okayness with what's here, there it is. The okayness, then we get to stay where Stephen is. There's just this effortlessness that's here and this okayness. And even when effortfulness comes, and even when contraction comes, if there's really okayness for it, where's the problem? Anything else for us, Brenda, on the sadness, the yearning for presence, yearning for connection? Anything else you'd like to share that you saw in your system?
No, just more gratitude to think, as I'm continue to live life and learn about me, the just deeper acceptance of all those parts. So I'm learning, I'm growing.
Yay. Yay. Gosh,
Thank you.
thank you for taking us to this exquisite place. What Brenda just said, like deeper acceptance of all the parts, which is just shorthand for us of everything that's arising within us. Deeper acceptance. And then here's a real tricky question. The accepting of what's here, is this something we need to do? Or as we really feel into this beingness that Stephen was describing for us, this peace, this comfort, this love, this neutrality, is just the very nature of that acceptance. Is Jim Carrey's movie, The Yes Man, that he believed he had to do it, but is it the very nature of this beingness, this home? It is, yes, it is acceptance, it is welcoming. What do you find? What do we all find in that? It's like, no, Sid, there's a doing here. We got to accept what is. And then and welcoming that too. And we're just playing. And anything I'm saying are not as like truisms. This is the way it is. We're just exploring together. That's what we're interested in. Again, is how it plays in your system. Just like the gift we just got from Brenda of her system, to see where it was and this yearning for presence and connection and how exquisite that is. All right, so before we go to Inga, is there anything bubbling that's wanting to be shared before we go to Inga? Anything bubbling? How are you? Is there discomfort when it's like, is anything bubbling? Oh, is he looking at me? Is he waiting for me to say something? It's like, what? Like, what's here? It's like, how are you? How are you as we're aware of our inner systems right now? Again, how are you in the foreground? What parts are here? What voices, what thoughts, feelings, and sensations arise? What's happening in your inner theater? Is there a sense of, wow, there's a lot to understand from what Brenda just shared. I need to integrate that, make sense of it, like an understanding part. Is there a sense of, it talks too much, I'm a little bored? It's like, either a critic or a bored part or a little discomfort here. There a healing part, like, wow, this could be really useful, what Brenda was sharing and about this acceptance. Wow, that could be really useful for my system. There's a little nervousness. Oh, what am I going to say when he comes around to to Jessica and Zoe and Inga? Is there something that needs to be said right? Or it's like what parts are here? And then what are they arising in you right now? What's the background? Is it like, oh, and there's Zoe? Well, actually, it's not outside, but look, she's got a nice chair. We could sit in her living room with that. We need 5 more recliners, Zoe, that rock. And like, what's here now? You find maybe some joy as we see Zoe on her recliner, her rocking chair. And what's it all rising in? Is it like Stephen's words, just the peace, the comfort, the love, the neutrality? Or more like Brenda's, this okayness that's here, this acceptance? What's the background that's here for you? Like, can we be aware of the background and the foreground? Whatever your background is, and also the parts. And is there a tendency, does it want to do the left hand, right hand thing? Does it want to, when I say that the left hand as the self and the right hand as parts, does it want to go, or like what Stephen was saying, like, yes, I really like this sense of home, this sense of peace, these qualities of self, where it just something wants to step back into that. And then there are the parts. Is there a sense of moving away from them, or is there a sense of more like welcoming them, accepting them? How's it playing in you right now? And again, there's no spiritual achiever might be like, there's some place that's better than the other. Oh, it's better to do what Brenda was doing, finding this acceptance. where it's better to be at home, like what Stephen was describing, but that's just a part, that's just a voice. And then there's what's here for you. And so here we are. Let's use Stephen's word again. His words here and now. Like here and now, because that's what brought him into this sense of home, this body. He was in this body here and now. Does that work? Is that helpful for you? Or like, nah, that's a Stephen one. It's not really helpful for me. Is it helpful? And then as we get ready to go to Inga, it's like Disneyland. We're going on another ride. It's like, what's that ride gonna be like? What's happening in Inga? Where is she gonna take us? Is she gonna mention a quality of self that isn't here for me? I don't even know it that well, and she's gonna help me get to know it, like a piano tune, like a tone, a chord on the piano. I'm gonna get to know self better, get to know home better. Or is she gonna share a part that's arising in her that, whoa, I forgot I have a part just like that. So, Inga, our next attraction. The curtain opens. What you got? What's here?
I mean, today a part is pretty much in the foreground. A part that is sad, that it seems like friendship, a very close, intimate friendship, is changing. And my part is like, this is not going to work, and I've lost this person. And so there's a lot of sadness. And there's a real longing for connection, for love, for connection, to be held. It's coming from this part, we say. And at the same time, it arises in a sense of okayness, this is so okay. And there's a joy. And there's and the gratitude. I would say it's a really, oh, sorry about this, my dog. Cookie. It's a causeless gratitude, it's not something that I cannot say I'm grateful because it's just there, just because it is. Can't even say that I'm grateful for this part. There's just gratitude.
Oh, first, for all of us, that was a lot. Just notice where you go with it. Just like as you hear Inga describe the sadness, maybe the loss of a friendship, the sad part, the sad expression. How did you meet that? Was it being met from this openness, this acceptance? Was it met from a quality of beingness in you? Or did you find a part calm? It's like, oh wait, we can fix this, or we can do it this way, or there was a narrator part. Like, what was coming up in you as we heard about the sadness that was going on in Inga? There's a reason I asked it. It's kind of part of the game we play here, because it can be easier to be with what's arising in other people's systems than in our own. And then we can notice if Inga's being met by beingness in us, acceptance, welcoming, kind of this effortlessness, or if it's a part that is kind of commenting or inside. And not in a right or wrong, but just in a curiosity about how it's playing in you, for the same reason that we all can, as we hear her sadness of the loss, we can all find that inside ourselves, right? Almost like a piano, the sadness, this part. Can you find a part inside of you that's like that? The sadness for a loss. And then when you notice that sadness in your system, is there a sense of, oh, I need to kind of push that aside? I don't, that hurts. I need to fix it, or I need to change it. And can you also find this that just is intimate with it, intimate with the sadness. It just kind of accepts it, loves it, hears it, nurtures tenderness. And then Inga describes causeless gratitude, gratitude that it's not because of something, it just is here. When you hear her describe that, or you feel it, like this is what's so awesome. Like we have Inga here, and if that causes gratitude, it's like, I don't really know that. Perhaps like a tuning fork, we can just tune into Inga and get a taste of it. What's your flavor of, how does that play in your system? Causeless gratitude. And lastly, she describes another flavor of this that we were hearing in Brenda, this okayness that's here. Also, this sense of causeless okayness. Causeless okayness. And joy. Wait a minute, joy that's not dependent on experience? That's not when her dog comes and licks her neck. It's like, like, sure, the joy comes, but joy that's just here causelessly. How does that play in your system? How do you know that? This is a big deal, right? Because all these kind of ancient spiritual people, they'd always talk about it. They'd use the word Satchitananda, and they were like the very nature of this consciousness is this Ananda, is this joy, is this bliss, is this fulfillment. And like to really get a taste of that as we explore together. And part of our game is like becoming more intimate with that and as that, however it's showing up in you. And then we're gonna dive back in with Inga here. And it's like, so my next question is, Inga, how does your system make sense of this? The sadness that's here. And you're just like, it's a pretty big part, the sadness and the sense of loss that's here. And then there's the joy and gratitude. How do they kind of coexist? How do you make sense of that?
It shows up in different ways. Sometimes when I feel blended, it's like, yeah, it's like that's me. But then right now it feels like the sadness it's like a constriction or a density within the joy. It feels like I'm like an embrace, like the breathing in of the sadness, something like that.
Where does it seem to be? With the sadness, is there a sense of it, just for all of us as we hear Inga describe this, and maybe it's sadness for you, or whatever the loudest sense of any kind of sense of contraction or want is in your system, because Inga's describing it as it's almost like a breathing it in, this intimacy with it that she's describing. How does this play in your system? When we go with we're going a little different than where Stephen took us. Stephen was one of the views, the sense of I love home, and there's a movement from home to parts to an effortfulness, and then there's a coming back to home that he described as the sense of the seeming movement. And this is core to our exploration, but we're going with a little different view here, which is the both and to see how does that play in your system. Like we're getting this in Inga's. It's almost like it's a breathing it in this intimacy. How does the contraction and want, what's the relationship between that and home, whatever home is for you, if it's peace, if it's this okayness, if it's acceptance, if it's gratitude. So where's the contraction in each of us? And Inga, where do you find it in you, the sense of the sadness?
It's in the middle of my chest, like the lower chest, right over my diaphragm. And it's also a little bit like a coming and going. So when this notices that, oh, presence is here, acceptance is here, it relaxes. and it almost like it melts. It's and then at a certain point it contracts again, you know, it's a coming and going. It's not a static thing. It's not like either or. Almost like a pulsation or a wave, you know.
So feel the contraction in the lower chest. And then there's a sense of acceptance. Self is here. The contraction experiences this. The sadness experiences that. Where is the acceptance?
The acceptance is all around and within. It's everywhere. It's just limitless.
And for all of us, as we hear this, we find this in our own system, the contraction being met, being welcomed, whatever it is for you, this relation between the self and the part. Is there anything you have to do for that to happen, for the acceptance, for the welcoming, for the contraction to experience that it's not alone, that there's self here, there's beingness here? Inga, does anything have to be done in your system for this to occur, what you're describing, this pulsing?
It's not a doing, it is more a seeing, like it is more a shift in perception, like a seeing, oh, or recognizing acceptance is here. Okayness is here.
You go really subtle with this, with what Inga's raising for us. She says it's not a doing, it's more recognizing, a seeing that okayness is here. Can we all find our version of that? This recognizing, the seeing. And then I'm gonna push it a little further here. Who's recognizing, who's seeing? Because some of us will find helper parts that help. I've got helper parts that are like, I can see, I understand this. Who's helping? Who's seeing in your system? And can you notice that there's some parts that are helping with this, who are just like hero parts? They're like awesome that they're here. And then can you find this recognizing, the seeing that's just here? That's just here. It doesn't have a sense of location. It's just here. What you got, Inga?
I would say the best way for me to say is when the focus relaxes a little bit. I mean, it is so present. It is so right here, right now. And the moment there's the focus relaxes, or there's a remembering, it's like, oh yeah, of course, it's here. And sometimes it's also just hearing about it, you know, the resonance with others. Like when I hear the acceptance in others, like it resonates in my system.
Mm. And then lastly with this, because we all have ideas of healing, right? We all have ideas of there's contraction in my system, there are remnants of trauma, there are difficulties, as Stephen was talking about, there was anxiety. And like we all know that. And then we also all probably have some kind of healing part, spiritual achiever, ones that have read the books, and it's like, okay, there's some healing to do here, there's something to be done. And then what we're exploring here is where that can all happen effortlessly as we're following Inga in this. And I'm wondering What's it like for the sadness, Inga, that's there? The sadness, the sense of maybe even grieving, like, gosh, I'm losing the friendship. It's not going to work. There's going to be a loss here. What's it like for that sadness, that loss, that expression, that feeling in your lower chest? Like when it's being, does it still feel somewhat alone in this, the contraction, or what's the relationship between that and the sense of being this acceptance, this okayness, this welcoming that's being, what's this like for the contraction in you?
Yeah, it feels really good. It's well, it's almost like a roller coaster between, when it contracts, it comes with this ooh, and then when it relaxes, there's almost bliss, it's like it feels so good. And I can't even tell exactly why, but it comes back again, and then it relaxes again. And so it's like an up and down, like a wave, coming and going.
Gotcha. And so there's a real subtle discernment that seems to happen as our system begins healing more from the ever-present beingness. Because what we're used to is doing something to help our parts. Like we have practices, we have these skillful means, and they're wonderful. I've used hundreds of them. They work, right? There's a usefulness in those. They're wonderful. Then it becomes, often they're parts driven. It's a part, it's a therapist part that comes, it's a helper part, it's an achiever part. And then there's this that Inga's describing, that Brenda was describing. It's just the beingness, this acceptance, this love that is. And this is what we call a tipping point in effortless IFS. It's like the sadness here, that like, I don't like this. This isn't good. I don't like losing my friend. I don't like this, the resistance to sadness. And then we ask, what is it like? What does it want? First, we need to fix this. We need to do something about this. We need to, or I need to give me, or in my system, give me a pizza. I want relief from this, or give me something to distraction, or get my healing part to do a little EMDR or whatever we're going to do to help it. But that's like going out through experience to find relief. And then there's this other option. There's this sense of finding relief, connecting with the fulfillment that we are, the sense of home that's here. And it's not something we do. The system just learns. It's like as a kid, we learned that if I had money, I can buy candy bars. Like something kept us from doing that, right? We have money now, we could all just buy candy bars and eat those every day, but we don't, right? Something learns. It's the same thing with this. It's a tipping point as the part that wants starts finding, well, there's relief and satisfaction that I can find from experience out there. But, Eckhart Tolle will say the only true fulfillment we can find is from our very nature of what we are. And that seems to be a little tipping point that happens where the parts start choosing more of this. And for some of us, it's both and. They're like, hey, I can do this out there. And we're in no way are we excluding it, or no way are we excluding working on that relationship or doing something and doing those things to help, but to find what Eckhart might call this true fulfillment. How about that, Inga? Any final thoughts?
I totally agree. I mean, what I find is, especially in this relationship that was so close, my parts were going really for compassion and for love. And now they're finding this inside and they are like, well, that's the real thing, And it's nice to get everything else on top. It's like to have the fulfillment and then to get it from other people. It's really
yes, right on, beautiful. We don't at first we could do like, hey, we can find fulfillment here, there's fulfillment, but we don't want to miss out on all of this, on this life, the wonder of all of that, and both and. Thank you, Inga. That was so much. How are we doing? Before we go to Jessica, what's anything comments, anything coming up? Any like, whoa, Wow, what do we got? You know you got a whoa there. You know you got like, whoa, really? We just did that? That was amazing. Come on, somebody give us something.
All right, I'll give some since nobody else is talking. What happened when Inga was talking, I pictured like a video game, which I play sometimes. So, it becomes going out and exploring becomes more of an adventure. It becomes more of an option. It's like an optional thing that we can do because it's like fun. But it doesn't, we're not seeking out for something that a person, a relationship can never give us, that's, from experience, I think we all know it just doesn't work. It's not going to give us that lasting fulfillment. So yeah, to me, I had this image of a video game, and it becomes like, yeah, we can enjoy being a character as an option. And then sometimes, of course, we get drawn into the character, we're like, oh, uh, I accepted this invitation to play the video game when I really didn't want to, and that's okay too. That we're just human beings, we're human. And to be okay with that, that's what came up.
Wow. What's our version of that? Steven is like a video game, playing a video game, knowing that he's not going to find really the fulfillment already here. It's not going to be from, hey, I got to level 4. Yay, I'm amazing. And the fun, but the fun of all that, who wants to be like, oh, I'm just neutral. I'm not going to have it. I'm not going to enjoy this game because I already am. Oh, good. So what's your version of that? Of this, sometimes called the dance of Leela, the joy of life, just the fully being immersed in this play. And then knowing this, what Brenda was pointing to, this okayness, it's just here that Inga was speaking, this okayness that's here, what Stephen's talking about, it's here. This is so fun, and we haven't even gotten to Jessica and Zoe yet. So let's take, let's take a breath. It's been like, we've been together for like 55 minutes. Oh, let's take a breath. Oh, we can shake it off. We can shake it off because especially like, all right. Ah, there we go. God, Brenda's really doing it. And then Zinga is like shaking it off. Woo! Or we can pretend like we're in Zoe's chair. We're just rocking back and forth. Woo! It's like, it's just, what if this is just all play and fun and we're just playing? It's like one of Steven's video games. We're just playing around together because it can get heavy, right? An understanding of, oh, I need to follow this. And Jessica's about to take us someplace else. Am I ready to really follow her and hear everything? It's like, we're just playing. And, oh. And like before we go, continue. Like, how are you? How are you? How you doing? What's here? Is there a part that's is there a contraction, a part that's kind of loud in the foreground for you? What are the loudest 2 or 3 parts for you right now? Is it like, God, this is exhausting. This is so much. Oh gosh. Or like, God, this is really fun. Let's play the video game some more. What's here? Or my back's hurting. What's here? What are the parts? And what are they arising in while we're playing the video game? Are we still aware that there's okayness here, even when like somebody's cutting us with a sword and we're losing the game? And it's like, is there still okayness here? The okayness that's here. And can we even touch the absence of lack that's here in the sense of this okayness or home or acceptance, an absence of lack in the background? While we have these beautiful parts that are arising, maybe it's a sadness, whatever's here. We're about to go to Jessica, and as we notice Jessica's box, it's like, what's there? How is life moving in Jessica? What are the parts? What parts are loud in her? And let me ask you something. Is there anything that she can say that could be truly foreign to us? Is there anything Jessica could share that would be like, oh, I don't know that. That's not part of my experience. I've never been there. Anything she could share. And in that, isn't it just kind of a funness? It's almost like for some of us, it's like these squares end up being, well, they're not separate squares. It's like a space we're all in together. And as Jessica speaks of whatever the presence is here for her, it's like, oh, that's part of this background that we're all sharing. And as she speaks of a part, maybe it's a sad part, maybe it's a joyful, maybe it's an achieving part. We're just noticing it in our field, in our shared space. What about that intimacy, that degree of connectedness, shared experience? All right, without further ado, what's going on, Jessica?
First, I just want to say, Inga, I love that phrase you used, a contraction within the joy. I just felt that the that it's there and it's welcomed and it's held. Like I just felt that phrase. I've been sitting with this knowing that self is always available, always in the background or the foreground, but always there. And there's a trust in that, and I can be blended or doing whatever is happening in here. There's a knowing that self is always available, and at some point I will feel it or get there. And I was also curious what else is running in the background for me. What am I swimming in so much I don't hear it? It's not a loud part because it's just the air I breathe, which for me is fear. Like there's so much fear always in the background, and sometimes it's loud enough that I hear it, but I think it has to get really loud before I hear it because it's always there. It's a sound I'm always hearing. And this has come up for me a lot, but this idea that Dick talks about when as a child you were punished for being in self energy. And so I think oftentimes in community, self energy and fear come up together for me. And so I've just been sitting with that fear and that awareness that it's there, and starting to notice it as an experience I had. And then it starts to feel like a part that I can say, oh yes, that happened to you, versus a truth about the world that has to come up with self.
Thank you. What's happening for all of us as we hear Jessica share? What's meeting what she shares? We have parts that come up like, oh gosh, I know this so well, and parts that are like she talks about this fear in the background that are like kind of a detective part. Like, I wonder what that is. And is there maybe a part that's like maybe it's a little scared of, oh, I don't want to go into that fear. Maybe it's a little scary as we hear her speak of that. And then you also find being met by self, by welcoming, by love, by connection, by intimacy. I'm going to pause for just a moment. I'm going to be right back. Thank you. There was someone speaking in my house. Let's just see what was here, what's here for us as we're being with Jessica, what's arising in us. And then my first question, Jessica, my first question for all of us as we hear Jessica speak about, there's something in the background that's just obscuring the self that we know is here. It's somehow being obscured. And in IFS, sometimes we call them self-like parts, but I'm curious how it plays for Jessica, and however it does. That's one way of knowing these. It's like parts that seem like self, or they just seem to be part of me. I'm so intimate with them, I can't even know them as something that arises. And so what I wonder, Jessica, and for all of us, fear. How do we relate to fear that's here for us in the background? And as we speak of this, let's just be careful if there's a spiritual achiever or something that says, yes, let's just dive into this fear. Let's go into the heart of darkness, because we don't want to do that. We're doing effortlessness here. And so we're just being aware of what's here, and there's no place we have to go, because some of these people will say we don't want to re-traumatize our system. We don't want to push. We don't want to push somewhere. There's no need to do that. This is in gentleness together. So I'm curious, Jessica, with the fear that's here, is there like a vibration to it, a tone to it, a feel to it as you recognize the fear? How do you know it's fear? How does it reveal itself to you?
I actually was wondering if they're competing fears. What I feel is a freezing up, or a wanting to run, or a wanting to hide.
The freezing. So what about this, Jessica? What about this for all of us? Sometimes we have, in my system, it might touch, in IFS, sometimes we call them exiles, these things that have been pushed down or pushed away, or a young vulnerability. And in my system, the sense of, there's a shame here. There's a not good enough. I didn't do it right. There's something wrong with me. There's something missing. It can be voices like that, which are often very young aspects of us. And that when they're touched, we have protectors that come in and like say, we got to get the way away from this. Or there's a sense, we have these wonderful protectors that come in to keep us safe in the midst of that. And so I'm wondering if you can discern with the fear, if it seems to be the response to something that's being touched deep within, or if it's the deep within, it's the very nature of the sense of, those were my words, the shame, the not good enough, there's something missing. Those can be very painful to touch.
What I feel, I think the freeze is that there are multiple protectors for multiple things, and that's where the freeze comes from, is they're fighting it out. Who's gonna be in charge?
Yeah.
What I most feel Well, so I think the first is that it's not safe to show up without protectors. And then the second is what's going to work to stay safe. And a fear of those also not working. I don't know if that answered your question.
It was wonderful, wonderful. So just are we all able to follow this in our own system? So the protectives, the protectors that come up. Do we all know freeze? Like, when do you know freeze? How do you know your system freezing? And can we find that in Jessica's describing as the protectors that come in and they kind of freeze? And can we find how then when that happens, that it's there to keep us, right? It's there to, there's a reason that's happening. It's there to serve us. Even when freezing comes, that, wow, awesome, it froze, because why did it freeze, right? It's probably wanting to protect us from feeling something, or feeling that, feeling the shame, the lack, whatever's there. How does this play in your system? And there's a lot, so much of this game is being aware, becoming aware of the parts. Because if we're aware of them, we're not aware as them. And this is, with Jessica, we're taking a deep dive into some people might call the darkness, but really the darkness, I love this quote, it's the darkness is only that which hasn't been met yet. And just a sense of as we're exploring, and then once it's met, we can also know it as a part. These protectors, for example, that freeze our system, like if we can really see them, and then if we can see them as a part, we end up falling in love with them. We see their innocence and beauty, and whether Dick Schwartz, founder of EIFS, says they're all good parts, no bad parts. Everything's here to serve us. And then it becomes much easier to be with what Brenda and Ingo were taking us to, this place of everything is this acceptance, this okayness. Even the fear, once we can see it, once we can be aware of it, the seeing, this recognition that Ingo, once we can see it, then it's much easier. Then we can dance. We can be in this okayness, even in the midst of fear. How you doing, Jessica?
Good. I just want to say, it feels like the freeze is actually competing protectors. So there's a protector that comes up and says, speak for a part, this is what I need to feel safe. And then a protector that comes in and says, well, that will upset people and that doesn't feel safe. And then there's no movement because they're competing with each other.
So how can we all find this competing protectors, like something scary, right? It's like you got a fire in your house. How are we gonna get the family out? How are we gonna take care of everybody? How are we gonna get safety? And you've got different views. It's like, no, we got to do this. We got to do this. And sometimes they can be just a frozenness in all these different ways. Like, we're scared. We got to do something. Can we have compassion? As we hear this in Jessica, do we have compassion for that? Like, yeah, I understand. That makes total sense. We have compassion for her parts, these protectors that are trying to help her. And then can we take that into our own system and find our resonance with this? These different ways we're trying to help. And sometimes we have these different perspectives. No, it'll be better if I just kind of stay in bed. That's where there's peace. It's better if I eat the pizza. It's better if I go for a run. Like these competing ways. And there can it be like our stage, our theater, and these different lovely protector parts trying to help us. What's that like in your system, Jessica, as you notice these competing protectors and it just kind of freezes the system, and as you're aware of that, what's that like?
feels like just the tiniest movement to just recognize that's what the freeze is. There's still no resolution, but
right? In that tiny movement of recognizing it, or is there awareness of these protector parts that are kind of battling it out in different perspectives? Is there awareness? Is there awareness of what's happening here?
yeah, it's easier to see.
Easier to see. And in the seeing, this is what we're playing with. And can we all relate to this? Sometimes the parts are so loud and so blended that there's just no space here. I just am these protectors battling. And what we're trying to do is find space. That's where Jessica's taking us. Can you touch perhaps some kind of okayness with what is, as you're aware of it, as aware of the theater of Jessica right now with these battling parts? Could there be like is there any acceptance or okayness with what's here, or perhaps there's just awareness of what's here? What do you find? How are you, Jessica? How you doing?
Then it becomes finding out what they need in order to stop feeling like they need to protect so fiercely.
Beautiful. That's a lot. That's a lot in our system, in the midst of parts that are like this, that are really loud. And our system often gets really scared with that. We have parts, this is too much. This is overwhelmed. I don't like this. To be able to go where Jessica's just took, this is the really deep stuff here. This is to be able to go there and find a sense of curiosity about what is it that these parts are longing for? What is being longed for? That's huge, because you see that there has to be a lot of space there. There has to be space there for that to happen. There has to be space and awareness. And I think we maybe should stop right here, because that's a lot, Jessica. And but what else would you like to share, Jessica, with us?
Good. That's a good stopping place.
Thank you. Could you find how this was real for your system? The battling protectors, the parts that are loud, the sense of, wow, there's no space here. Thank you. I need to leave. From Brenda. Oh, Brenda, Brenda, thank you for your gifts today. Final words for us.
Just gratitude. Thank you for everyone. Just resonated with everything, and I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Yay.
See you soon.
See you soon. Oh, wow. But before we go to Zoe, who's just been like, it's like I don't know what my analogy is. It's like when you're waiting with somebody who's just we're seeing her move from outside to her. She's just been, as we notice Zoe, it's like, what's to come? What does she have for us? It's been so much today. And what's going to be here? What's she going to share with us? Before we go there, let me just check in again. Maybe you can just shake a little bit again, shake a little bit. It's like, whoa, this is a lot. We've got like another 13 minutes together, which we're going to be diving in with Zoe. Like, what's here? And we shake it up as loose. And like here, let's use Stevens again. The here now, here we are, here now, here we are, this presence. Or Inga's this sense of just this okayness, this gratitude. Jessica's this awareness, just aware of what's here. Just here we are. And if you'll join me in just the curiosity about, there might be some exhaustion here, and we just notice that. And like, it's almost like a celebration. We're like, join me in celebrating Zoe. Like, what's here? Beautiful Zoe. Tell us something. What's here for you?
Hi there, everybody. There's some physical tiredness that meant that I've had some little naps in the last hour and 20 minutes. and it has felt a lot when I have a lot in my own system. So I think that was a part kind of protecting me a bit from taking in more. Just to go back to Stephen's the points where I was very awake. So to go back to Stephen's kind of question about, when do you really know, that self is here or that okayness is here? I have discovered this week that it's when my system knows a yes and is saying yes, full-bodied yes to something. And I think that feels like a new place for my system, very much so. And I recognize also Jessica's, these protective parts where you end up feeling not a lot of space, because I certainly have felt that, because I have wanted to leave my job for quite a few years, and there was just an internal battle and going on, and I didn't know how to resolve it. I didn't know how to work with those different parts and their different views. So there was this underlying tension, and I kind of experienced that, physically for the last kind of 3 years, probably, with kind of quite a bit of illness, I think. No, I guess over the last year, I'm aware that I have kind of been making, effortless EIFS and everything that means to me a kind of daily practice. And so when something happened at work where I put in a request and the answer was no, like just really quietly inside to the no that I heard, there was a kind of, well, hell yeah. And it was really quiet at the beginning. And as I kind of found these parts of me that were carrying a lot of distress at work, and kind of made contact with them and brought them home kind of really in recent months, then the kind of yes grew louder and louder. And yeah, so after 11 years in the same room of a very high pressurized job, yeah, I left yesterday. And and I guess I'm in awe, really, that I'm aware that these protectors have allowed me to do this. They haven't allowed me for a long time. They couldn't, because I don't think they had enough contact with okayness and actually, this can be okay. They didn't have that, and so I kind of recognize that now. Okay, they're allowing me to do this. Wow, okay, this is kind of new. And yeah, I mean, yes, simple little word. Like, yeah, like, yes, kind of like sits at the top of the spine, doesn't it? I've been aware in my rocking chair, there's that yes moment of my head. Ah, yeah, my head kind of balancing, like balancing on the top ring of my spine. And it's just, ah, yeah, yeah. I'm aware that no's just underneath it. Ah, no. I don't know. I've said a lot of no's, but this is like a yes. And there was a lot of tears this week, you know, from the people around me, my team that I've led for all these years and all sorts. And I haven't cried. And I don't know, I guess their okayness. I mean, that yesterday and the day before, all week really, there's just been joy. Joy, this is quite a new emotion for me. Joy. Oh dear. I think, you know, people have said to me over my life, you know, oh, it's like I'm carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders all the time. Joy. Yeah. Joy. Joy at the love. Just the love. I've received an enormous amount of love this week and joy. Yeah, that's new too.
So I get it. So how's this for all of us as we hear Zoe in this celebration of what's happening inside of her? It feels like a celebration here as she describes all of this. What's this like? What are you finding in your system? Are you noticing parts that are responding in the sense of this, and then being the self that responds and meets? How's it playing in your system? God, I wish we had an hour to just go into the celebration with Zoe and dive into it. It's like so much there. First, I loved how she started with the sleepiness, with, oh, I've just been sleeping through a lot of this. And it's like, wow, maybe because there was a lot going on here and something new. Like, I don't want to, it's like there's enough going on inside. I don't really take anything else in. And how wonderful that we always have that, right? The sleepiness, the I'm just going to go to sleep, or I'm just going to go take a break, take a rest, take a nap. It's like, can we, like, we might have a should, I shouldn't do that. Jessica's like, oh, it's like that, but it's like the sleepiness and how it can be a wonderful protector. I just love that. And then Zoe's version of Stephen's sense of home that we've been talking about. We've had different flavors of that in each of us as Jessica speaks about that there's awareness of this, and then we talked about the acceptance and the okayness. But Zoe's, it's a full-bodied yes, is when it's a full-bodied yes. It's yes. It's yes. Yes. And it's even, yes, I love this quote of her. She said, then there was a hell no. And there was a no, there was a no, and there was a hell yes to that. There was a hell yes to the no. Even the no, there was a yes to that. How about that? Like the acceptance of the no, the yes to that. And she talks about the parts that she was at work, the parts that would have distress, there was distressed parts. And she's noticing and kind of stepping away that the yes is getting louder. And she's describing the sense of being at work. And we all know situations like this where we've been in an environment that's like evoked a lot of our parts and invoked protector parts. And it can be, and she describes the protective parts, that there was a sense of physically it would be felt as we had a lot of protector parts come in, and that she was even describing physical illness that came. There's so much here. Physical illness that came with the contractions in the system. Back to the full body, the yes. How are you resonating? How is this translating for your system? If Zoe was, as we celebrated her, if she was really facilitating you, facilitating your inner world, your exploration of the protected parts, the distress, the contraction. And then for her, it was changing environments from work to home and noticing what's opened up. How do you relate to that? Even physical illness that came with protected parts. And then the yes is becoming louder and louder as the foreground of these protective parts, just like Jessica, she describes the fear. And as we become more aware of the fear and the protective parts, this beingness, we become more and more aware of it. It's just what happens. And in Zoe's, it's embodied in the sense of a yes. Zoe, how can you bring this all together and be our finale today? You get final words are all yours, Zoe. Bring it together for us.
Oh, just trust in the deep dive into the process. Yeah, and just being able to embrace it all. Embrace it and hold it all. Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Everybody, thank you so much as we co-created today. Such a treat. Thank you. And come back again soon. Thank you, everybody. See you later.
So much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.